All right, welcome to the Shockwave Skull Sessions podcast. I am your host, Bob Nalbandian, and this is episode number 15. A great episode this is. What you heard right there in the intro was the band Unearth, the title track from their new CD entitled The March. That is available right now on Metal Blade Records, so be sure to check that out. And yes, we do have Unearth vocalist Trevor Phipps on this episode, along with the great Blasko. Of course, many of you know Blasko from Ozzy Osbourne, the current bass player for Ozzy Osbourne, and many of you will remember him from his previous bands, most notably Rob Zombie. This is a special episode in the sense that this is another music business episode. As many of you may know, not only is Blasko and Trevor Phipps musicians in metal bands, but they also head their own music companies. Blasko has his own music management company called Mercenary Management, and Trevor Phipps has his record label called Iron Clad Recordings. And you know, on the Shockwave Skull Sessions podcast, as you know, we feature discussions and we try to get a lot of different varieties. We've got a lot of great letters from all you listeners out there. A lot of people really enjoy the debates and discussions we have with the classic rock and metal bands, which is always a lot of fun. And a lot of people really enjoy the previous thrash metal episodes. Of course, on the last episode, we had the great Gary Holt with Ron Quintana and William Howell telling some great stories about the old classic 80s thrash metal days. And we've had some episodes touching about the music business. In fact, a few episodes back, we had a great conversation about the music business with both David Ellefson and Robert Bolger. And a lot of people really appreciated that issue and the advice, particularly David Ellefson gave to a lot of the young musicians, as well as people wanting to get their start in the music business. And seeing that both Blasko and Trevor Phipps are both musicians that had their own music companies, I thought it would be great to get the perspective of the business side as a musician from these guys. And I really railed into them on this, talking about several issues of the music industry. You know, a lot of trade papers and different magazines have been talking about the uncertainty of the music business and what the future lies for the industry. But not many of the articles related to the issues of heavy metal, which of course is really its own industry when it comes to the music business. It is such a separate entity because, as you will know, and I'm sure as many of you can confirm, heavy metal fans have a certain loyalty that not many other genres of music really carry with their audience. So as I say, I do rail into these guys, and I do appreciate Blasko for helping me set this episode up. In fact, Blasko got me in touch with Trevor Phipps for this very episode. So great episode, particularly for any of you musicians out there or anyone looking to get into the music business. A definite must listen. Another great episode we did a while back. I interviewed Monty Connor. This was for the Shockwaves Hard Radio podcast, and Monty talks a lot about the ever-changing music industry and gives a lot of advice for young artists looking to get into the music industry. You can check that out at the Hard Radio site, of course, at hardradio.com. And you can subscribe to both the Shockwaves Skull Sessions podcast as well as the Shockwaves Hard Radio podcast on iTunes. So subscribe and send us those comments. You can email me directly at shockwaveskullsessions@gmail.com. And of course, the official Shockwave Skull Sessions website is roadrunnerrecords.com/skull sessions. And of course, you could write your comments in on that website there as well. So please give some feedback. Love to hear from you guys, and I do answer all the emails I receive. Also, before we get into this interview, I want to remind you we are still doing the contest. We're going to do it for one more episode, and on the next episode, we are going to announce the winner of the guitar riff contest, the winner of the brand new PV Zodiac DE bass guitar. Our great sponsors at PV are supplying this guitar for the winner of this contest. So check out the PV site. If you want to check out the guitar, you could go to their site at pv.com and check out the Zodiac DE bass guitar. That can be yours, but you got to email me ASAP. So listen back a couple episodes back where we ran that contest and try to identify those riffs. Even if you could identify a few, email me. You never know, you could be a winner. All right. One last thing I do want to mention. As many of you know, I just recently moved back to Los Angeles. I am once again an LA resident. And you might have noticed that some of these Shockwave Skull sessions have slowed down a little bit. That's because I was really busy preparing for this move. And what I had done in preparation for the move, I had done several interviews over the last couple months for the Shockwave Skull sessions. So many of these interviews might sound outdated. In fact, this interview in particular with Blasko and Trevor Phipps was recorded a couple months ago. I believe it was back in late September. So there might be a couple things that might sound a bit outdated on this. But all in all, I think you will thoroughly enjoy this discussion. I do have a few more episodes in the can. In fact, our next episode is going to be a great discussion on the AC/DC catalog, and that will be with John Bush from, of course, Anthrax and Armored Saint, as well as Ed Rivadavia. Many of you might remember Ed from the great Metallica discussion we had a couple episodes ago regarding Death Magnetic. And that'll be followed by a great Uriah Heep debate. So definitely keep posted to the Shockwave Skull Sessions website. Once again, roadrunnerrecords.com/skull sessions. And we got many other great conversations and debates coming up, including a great discussion about 80s metal. As I say, I do like to diversify, so I try to get all aspects of hard rock and metal. We got a great Scorpions debate that's going to be coming up, and one on the new wave of British heavy metal. Lots of great stuff coming up, man. So definitely keep posted here and keep sending me those comments, because I do go by you guys' feedback. So if you got any suggestions, send them my way. So without further ado, man, let's get right into this discussion. It runs a little over an hour long. And at the end of the discussion, both Trevor and Blasko give out their contact information and their MySpace pages. So I know there's a lot of artists out there that might want to submit their material to them. So be sure to listen to the entire interview. And as I said, they do give their information out toward the end of this podcast. So let's get right into it. This is the great Blasko and Trevor Phipps on Shockwave Skull Sessions. So we got Blasko and Trevor Phipps here on this Shockwaves Skull Sessions podcast. What's going on, guys?
Chilling, man. Chilling.
So, as many people probably know, Blasko is the current bass player for Ozzy Osbourne. You've also played with Rob Zombie, Prong, Danzig, started out with Cryptic Slaughter in the late 80s. Am I missing? Oh, Drown as well. Am I missing any bands there, Rob?
No one worth of mention.
Very cool. So you've obviously been around the block for quite a while. Like I said, Cryptic Slaughter, I remember when the records came out back on Metal Blade in the, like 85? It was like just after the thrash boom hit, huh?
It was like 86 through 88. We were a band on Metal Blade.
One of the original hardcore bands that came out during the mid to late 80s. And we got Trevor Phipps, the vocalist for Unearth, and also president of Iron Clad Records, correct?
Recordings, but yeah, that's right.
Recordings, okay. I guess we can't use the term records anymore, right?
I guess not.
That's a bit outdated. Before we get started on this, we'll kind of get a brief update on what you guys are up to. Now, Rob, I know you recently did Ozfest this summer in Texas with Ozzy. You got any recordings coming up with Ozzy that you're working on, or?
We're currently, in the beginning processes of making another record. It was in the news a while back that he upped his deal over at Epic. So we've sort of slowly started that process now with, no real end date or no real deadlines do we have to follow. It's kind of like whenever it's done, it'll be done.
All right. Do you got any more shows going on, or is the tour completed?
There's no more shows for this year as of now. There's nothing that's booked.
And I guess we also should mention one of the other main reasons we got Blasko on is Rob Blasko. You're mostly known by Blasko, correct?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, well, to make things less confusing, we'll just call you Blasko here.
Perfect.
Blasko also has a management company called Mercenary Management. And I know you've got In This Moment, Goat Horse, Soylent Green, and a few other bands. You want to talk about your management company a little bit?
Me and a partner of mine, we started the company a few years back. Most currently, we just put out Intronauts' new record through Century Media. Their record just came out on the 16th. We have an In This Moment record coming out on the 30th. We've got some other, stuff in the works, and, we've got, bands on tour and all that stuff. So it's going well. It's a good little side venture to be involved with.
So, dude, that must be hectic. I mean, being in a huge band like Ozzy, which is obviously pretty demanding in itself, and then to run a management company, how does that work out for you?
It works out well. The Ozzy schedule isn't so demanding in the sense that I'm not Ozzy Osbourne. I'm not the dude that has to do like all the press and all the stuff that he has to do because it's his band. So I've got a lot of time to be able to focus on other things that I want to do. And the management company is the one thing that I've been the most passionate about and wanting to sort of laterally move throughout the business, in other avenues. Playing with Ozzy Osbourne is an honor and a lifelong goal. So that I'm content with what I do musically, as a musician. So I like to look, into and focus on doing other things other than that.
And Trevor, you've recently with Unearth, you put out 2 records this year, didn't you? You put out a live record and the studio record, The March. Is that correct?
The March comes out October 14th. And we put out a DVD back in March that has a live performance and a career-spanning documentary on it.
And that was a Live from the Apocalypse?
Live from the Apocalypse, yep.
Now you're based in Massachusetts, correct?
Yes, we are, just outside of Boston.
And you guys have some time off now? Are you guys still doing shows, or what's up with the band?
We start tour October 1st, and we have a full U.S. tour the entire month, and then we head over to Europe for the month of November, and we're just out there in support of the new record coming out on the 14th.
All right. No, you guys are total road dogs. The last couple of years you've been on just about, every major festival from the, Ozfest, Sounds of the Underground, the Headbangers Ball Tour, the Slayer Tour. You've been touring constantly. Do you have the same kind of grueling touring schedule planned for the upcoming year?
Oh yeah, man, that's how this band survives. We just tour and tour, man. That's with mainstream rock radio not being a big supporter of bands as heavy as we are. We have to kind of get out there and play, in front of as many faces as we can. And that's the way this band stays on top.
Well, that's one of our main conversations here. We're going to talk about the underground metal scene. And I know, of course, you've got your label, Iron Clad Recordings, and that is going through Metal Blade, correct?
Yeah, back in 2004, I signed a deal with Blade to do a distro deal for me, and it's been working out great so far. And I started this project back in 2002 with a friend of mine, just to put out bands that we both like. And it's grown to a point where the bands are actually on tour a lot and just out there. And there's not one band that's kind of broken yet, but bands are out there doing well. They have tours set up, and I'm selling some records, and it's feeling pretty good.
All right. Well, I know If Hope Dies, that's one of your artists, right? They're doing quite well. I've heard a lot about them. And what's some of the other bands you got on your label?
I just put out a record by a band called The Classic Struggle. They're a kick-ass metal band. A band before that came out in August was a band called Early Graves. And then coming up in November, I have a band called Kill What I Adore. That's a good band coming out pretty soon.
Obviously, things are so different nowadays than, from what I remember. I mean, I remember working at Roadrunner Records, their LA office back in the 90s when, people were still sending, demo tapes on cassette. I mean, nowadays people are able to use, Pro Tools and whatnot in their own bedrooms and put stuff out through their MySpace sites. I mean, it must be overwhelming the amount of material you guys get.
Well, I mean, it's one of those things where, yes, exactly how you said, in the sense of Trevor and I can hang up the phone with you and go hook up via online and make a band and have a MySpace page up by the end of tonight, with our own little side band if we really wanted to. I mean, it's really that simple. So because of the ease of it, you get a lot of people, doing just that, putting together things and putting up MySpace pages. But I mean, I think in the position where, either Trevor or I are at, is that, you really have to deal with bands that sort of take themselves seriously. And, music aside, you have to kind of search out the talent that are out there doing it. That are going to get out there and they're going to get in a van and they're going to get out there and they're going to make a name for themselves. And that's sort of separating the men from the boys. It's easy for some dudes to get together and make some music, but to really, make the effort to go out there and get their name out there and promote and market themselves, that's a whole other animal. And those are the kind of things that we look for.
Right. And now I know, Rob, or Blasko, you grew up in the L.A. scene, and even prior to Cryptic Slaughter in the early 80s, you were playing, the Sunset Strip. And I grew up in L.A. too, and I remember how the scene was where, you had to perform live. That was, the way to get signed. You had
Sure.
to prove yourselves and showcase.
Sure. And just for the record, I didn't play the Sunset Strip.
Well, I've had the LA club scene, I should say, I guess. Back then it was a major glam scene, so I will correct myself there.
Right. They weren't having bands like us. I mean, we had to really figure it out. I mean, you got to figure Black Flag broke up in 1986, and they kind of paved the way more or less for and playing these places that weren't necessarily clubs and bringing in their own PAs. In the mid 80s with this sort of underground stuff. I mean, we had like Fender's Ballroom, or like we play in like I'm sure Trevor was playing VFW halls whenever we were playing like basketball gymnasiums and stuff. A lot of the stuff we had to do was very makeshift, and we had to really kind of just backyard parties even. We kind of just really had to go for it. There was no nowadays there's clubs for all this kind of stuff, but back then there wasn't.
Oh, absolutely. When Cryptic started, you were more playing like with other punk bands, right? Because it was kind of separate between metal and punk in those days. It didn't really quite cross over. I mean,
then it was called crossover. Now you've got Wikipedia pages on like 25 different subgenres of already a subgenre. Then it was just crossover, and so you'd play with either a metal band or a punk band. I mean, we would do a show opening for Discharge one month, and then 2 months later we'd do a show opening for Dark Angel. So it was kind of like, you got what you got. I mean, the lifestyle then was a lot more, a lot less defined, say, than it is now.
Right. And I know you started out on Metal Blade Records, which is also the label Unearth is on. Now, Trevor, you actually started on a label called Eulogy. Was that through Metal Blade, or was that a separate label?
No, that was our first label. Back in 2001, we put out our first record, Distinct Conscience, and it was more of a underground hardcore label. They were a great label to be on. They helped us get our start. And then in 2003, we played in front of Mike Saley. He decided to buy out our last record on that first label. And so things have been a lot better since. But it was a good label to just get our feet wet on.
Now, how was the scene? I mean, you guys, the band started on Earth in the late 90s, right?
98, yeah.
How was it on the East Coast there when you guys started? Was there a good club scene for bands like Unearth?
Just like Blasko was saying, I mean, it was bands that played metal out here, but there weren't any good metal shows to be had. So the bands would always just put their own shows together in the VFW halls or kids' basements and just play with more of a hardcore ethic. That's where I think the term metalcore came from. A bunch of metal bands like us and Killswitch Engage, Shadows Fall, All That Remains all played with this like hardcore mentality, but with those bands all playing metal music. And that's where the band all came from. And as the years went by, we sold more records. Then we all got a bit more notice. You know what I mean? But I think back then that's where the bands came from.
Right. Well, I know a lot of that scene was happening in the East Coast there, and around the same time, late 90s, when the kind of hardcore scene, you mentioned Shadows Fall, Killswitch, Lamb of God. I mean, these are all bands that you've toured with. Were you actually playing together before you guys got signed?
Yes, we were. There was actually a show we played in front of about, I think, 16 people. It was us and Killswitch Engage and a couple other bands at the time, and that was back, I want to say, as early as 99 or 2000, and nobody cared. You know what I mean, at all. And then within a year or two, we had, good-sized crowds to play in front of. And it was just, the bands were just kind of grew up together. This is like, we all were from the same area, and we all played the same shows, just kind of fought through it all. A bunch of bands broke up, but a bunch of bands that did have the success and the staying power did stick around.
So, Blasko, what about your management company? How did that all come about?
Just sort of a need or more of a desire just to kind of stay within the business. I've been in the business for a long time. Like, we were talking about, like, he started in, like, 1985. And so I've got a lot of expertise, just through experience, with being in the business and making contacts. I mean, it's like, here we are on multi-generations of Metal Blade, bands right here on the phone, So it was kind of one of those things, like, I really wanted to make a lateral move within the business and stay within it, but not be a musician, sort of live vicariously through younger bands that were out there kicking it and really hungry and wanting to get out there and do their thing. So because of my connections and sort of knowledge of the business, I thought that it would be something worth trying and, getting into and found some bands and, just trying to do my thing, and making those connections and, get out there and trying to do the best that I can for, the bands that we work with.
Well, that's why I really find admirable for both you guys being artists and with the changing industry and now with everything being so fucking corporate and whatnot. I mean, it's great the fact that, with all the experience you guys have as artists, to have your own label or management company, you know what bands have to go through. And you guys all both started as underground artists. It wasn't like, you guys got signed right away. You both had to work the underground, both on independent labels. And touring was basically how you guys built your following. I mean, when you guys went out on tour, whether it be, with you, Blasko, from Cryptic Slaughter, or, with Unearth through, the beginning stages, I mean, you guys had to get out in a van and go out and tour. But with the record industry changing so much, what are you guys doing to keep, tabs with the changing industry, with everything from the abundance of downloading of music to the way the whole touring scene has become? Let's start with you, Blasko.
I think that I kind of rely on the kids, I kind of rely on, going out to shows, seeing what the kids are into, going on MySpace, seeing the bands that are blowing up. I think I know what I like, but I'm not a kid anymore. I'm almost 40. And so by no means can I put myself in a position of knowing what's hip. I mean, I think whenever, I was a teenager or whatever and into the stuff that I was into, or even just being in Cryptic Slaughter or whatever, I certainly would know that I got it then because I was a kid and that was the scene that we were in, and that's what we did. But, I'm sure my parents were about my age, how I am old now, and I'm sure they weren't looking at what I was doing then as anything all that terribly groundbreaking other than just some noise, some bunch of dudes that got together and made a bunch of racket in the garage, So I think I rely on the kids to kind of, turn me on to what's hip and what's cool. I mean, like I said, I know what I like, but, maybe that isn't the wisest choice to keep up on what's happening, I mean, I have to sort of rely on what other people are into as well.
As far as the changing industry, I mean, of course, when you started back in the mid-'80s, Rob, I mean, things are drastically different now. But even though, Trevor, when you started in the late '90s, you didn't really have the whole downloading of music, whether it be the Napster or even the legal stuff through iTunes and all that. Up until probably 2000. Is it a lot more difficult going out and trying to find bands that could actually sell records? I know you have to find bands that could constantly tour. That's, especially for metal and underground metal. But has it affected you guys? And what are you guys doing to keep up with the future of music?
I think as far as making music, just play what you like and, play as many shows as possible and get on the shows and the tours to just have the band be heard. As far as finding bands out there, it's actually kind of easier at this point to figure out which bands are the ones that you should take on tour, because there's so much music out there for you to actually listen to at the touch of your fingertips. It's all on the web, and there's actually a counter now for which bands people actually do go check out the most. So it's like, what kid has that band's 4-song demo the most because it's on MySpace or something, you know what I mean? So there's bands out there that get their start from it, and you can't take a band on tour like that the new hot MySpace band. But if a band does get that kind of hype behind them, when they do get out there and actually do the hard work on the road and do jump in the van and tour and get a few tours under the belt and show that they're worth, those are the bands you can actually take on tour and feel good about. I think that's just the best way at this point. I mean, you can't just go on what the band does on MySpace. That band had 12,000 plays today. That's awesome, but if the band can't go on tour and draw at least 200 people, then you can't really take that band on tour.
Obviously, the gaming market has become so huge over the last few years, and they say the gaming market is now outselling both the music business and the movie industry. It's particularly a huge market for heavy metal, and in particular the heavier bands, the thrash and hardcore metal bands. How important is it for a label like Iron Clad to recruit artists for video games and soundtrack?
I mean, if that happened, it'd be huge, and that's something that Unearth is trying to do, is to get on out of rock band or Guitar Hero, because that is it's a big impact right now for bands that are on there. There's a band that we're good friends with, a band called All That Remains, and they're doing great right now. The last record was amazing, and they actually got on Guitar Hero, and actually it gave their record a spike. And so that's what bands are actually looking for right now, is to just go out there and get yourself heard on those, because people are actually buying those games. And if they can hear your song on those games, then they'll end up liking it, or at least a few will, and that's actually going to push the band forward.
Absolutely. I was talking to Monty Connor from Roadrunner, and we did an interview, and he was talking about the band Dragon Force and how after they did the Guitar Hero, I mean, their album just exploded just from them having a track on Guitar Hero.
Crazy day and age right now, man.
Blasko, what about you? I know you've been involved in a lot of these, whether it be soundtracks or games with some of the artists you've been involved with. How difficult is that, shopping it to, say a gaming company and whatnot? How is that different than, I mean, it seems like everything's kind of where the focus is on stuff like gaming and stuff, where in the past, it was just all about hitting up the radio and whatnot.
Well, I mean, I think it's a matter of marketing, and I think you have to put your music in front of where the kids are. The majority of kids these days are sitting, on a couch in front of a video game. Like whenever you want to go market a product, no matter what the product is, you have to do a lot of analysis as to, okay, let's define where this audience is. Where do they shop? What do they do during the day? And let's put our product in front of these people's faces. So I think that it's a natural progression that, you got kids that are in front of video games all day long. Well, let's put our songs in front of those kids. Kind of makes sense. I mean, as far as getting songs on there, I mean, I think it depends. I mean, look, Cryptic Slaughter, we had a song on a Tony Hawk game. I didn't notice anything drastically different in record sales for us than before or after it, but you look at a band like Dragon Force, and they had a big spike in sales, and they profited well from that visibility. And so by just throwing a song in a video game doesn't necessarily equate to some kind of success, but it's just one more piece of the puzzle. I mean, from my perspective, it seems like it's a political thing. It's sort of who you know, but that's the entertainment business. Some bands, if they make a name for themselves or they sold a lot of records or they're visible in some way, the games kind of come after them. And other times you got to go after the games. But that's the business, regardless of what it is. But it's interesting. It's interesting to see how much the landscape of underground metal is changing and where we're going and where we're taking things. And it's interesting.
Yeah, well, it's gotten so much more mainstream now, not just with the games, but you see, stores that almost cater to underground metal, Hot Topic, and stores in the malls and stuff. Whereas before, as you remember back in the 80s, I mean, bands had to really struggle just to get gigs, let alone have any kind of media exposure. What's the easiest way for artists to impress you guys as far as signing them to your either your management company or your record label? Trevor, what about you?
I think there's three main factors besides me actually liking what I hear. I want to see the band actually on tour in the past and, future shows coming up. I do want to see a DVD of the band playing live, or if they're coming through my area, I'd like to see them play live. And if they can send a picture or video of them in their van with a trailer, that's a huge thing, because if bands don't have that, then they don't have the transport to get to and from their gigs or go on tour. And so you can't just sign a band and expect the band to sell records. I actually made that mistake recently with I signed a band and they had some hype on them, and then I signed them, put the record out, and then they had no vehicle to transport around on. And I'm not a big operation at this point, so I can't afford to go and buy the band a van. And so that's very important, just to know the band has the gusto to actually go out there and make things happen for themselves.
Well, that's important, because I think, bands still have to work, to get out there and tour. And I think that's the misconception. A lot of bands just think, everything's going to be provided for them.
You can't just have MySpace players. You have to, get that, of course. That's important to have people actually care. But then actually go out there and do the legwork and create your own, groundswell and fan base.
Well, you look at, I mean, the industry has been constantly, or the media, I should say, has been constantly just force-feeding the pop crap down everyone's throats. But, you look at the bands, like yourselves, Unearth, bands like Lamb of God, SLA Dying. I mean, you guys are still selling huge amounts of records. They talk about the industry and, how record sales have dropped. I mean, these are bands, getting in the top 10 on Billboard, which is, or at least the top 20, which has been unheard of, back in the day. And you guys are basically selling records through constant touring. I mean, you go from festival tour to festival tour and just nonstop.
I don't think that bands like ourselves and Killswitch and stuff we're not really selling more records than the bigger bands of the 80s and 90s did. It's just that pop music is selling less than it did.
What I'm saying is those bands were getting, the huge radio play and MTV exposure. I mean, you might get occasional Headbangers Ball and this kind of stuff, but it's pretty much the touring. Right. Whereas bands like, Bon Jovi and Motley Crue, they couldn't rely just on the touring alone. I mean, they had a lot of media help.
Bands are just out there just selling their own records. We have great support from our label. but we wouldn't sell the records that we did if we didn't tour as pretty much nonstop as we all do. You know, it's not just about what's on MySpace and what's on the radio or what's on MTV. That's why these bands are staying in the charts and actually selling some records. You know, these bands aren't going gold or platinum, but we are selling some records and actually, you know, making a career out of this.
Now, I know, Blasko, you've got a couple bands, particularly in this moment. They're getting a pretty good buzz and getting some, you know, video play, whether it be on, you know, Headbangers Ball or Fuse. How's that going for you, the In This Moment record right now?
Their new record comes out on the 30th of this month. But, you know, I mean, we've got them going out on tour here in a couple days. We've got the record set up pretty well. We've got some, you know, magazine covers in the works, and you know, all good things. You know, I mean, I think the setup is good. You know, we're feeling really great about it. The last record was a success for a band's first record, and we're hoping that this one will be equally, you know, as much of a success.
How has, I mean, this is something, you know, everyone's always talking about, but the illegal downloading, how has that personally affected both you, Rob, as a management company, and you, Trevor, as a label owner? Do you see it, you know, a lot of labels and bands have used it to their benefit, you know, whereas obviously, you know, a lot of labels have lost a lot of money from it. How do you see it, and what paths are you doing to work with the fact that there's an overabundance of people that just want to get music for free?
I mean, with Unearth, we haven't really noticed a sharp decline at all. I mean, both records are kind of the same. I think what it does, though, you know, it's both good and bad. I mean, it does allow more people to have your music and come to your shows and know your stuff. But it's kind of weird going into a city and drawing the same amount of people as a band who might sell 600,000 records just because your fans might have it for free. So it's both good and bad. It gets your tunes out there, but at the same time, I don't think there'll ever be a day where my band sees an actual, you know, check from our label because we sold some records. You know, I don't think that really happens anymore.
Where do you guys, I mean, see the future of extreme metal going? I mean, you know, nowadays, like we talked about, you know, extreme metal has become, in a sense, mainstream. Whereas, you know, back in the day, it was, you know, there was basically no media exposure. And how much more extreme can you be from a band like, you know, a Lamb of God or a Slipknot or Unearth? Where do you see it actually going? Do you see it becoming more extreme? And if so, what would it sound like? Let's start with you, Trevor.
I think there's far more extreme bands than us and Log and Killswitch and Slipknot.
Well, if you talk like black metal and all that, if you talk like vocal,
metal,
yeah, I mean, there's a lot more like vocal extreme and that kind of stuff. But I mean, it ends up getting to the point where it just kind of becomes silly. Or
there's some really heavy stuff that I think it's more of a taste thing. I definitely have a liking for some of the really extreme stuff. But I think that, you know, most people have a palate for what they like for tunes, and I think that the more extreme it gets, the smaller that actual, you know, crowd gets. So I don't think that real, you know, extreme heavy metal will ever be mainstream. I don't expect to ever hear Unearth on mainstream radio. I know that Log had one song last year that hit a couple stations, but I don't think that many people really want to hear music this extreme. I think it will always be underground. I don't think it's going to be on mainstream MTV. I know there's some crossover with bands that can do it. You know, bands like Ozzy and Metallica can actually get out there and have more of the pop friendly crowd in there to listen to.
Well, they've
really
kind of changed
stuff.
their sound according to the times, both Ozzy and Metallica. You know, I mean, you listen to the earlier Ozzy records to now, you know, it's a lot different than, you know, obviously same with Metallica. And when you mention Log, you're talking about Lamb of God, obviously, just for people that might not know. What about you, Blasko, as far as where do you see not just extreme metal going, but the future of metal? Where do you see it going as far as the trends and whatnot, or the new styles of music coming out? And what are you looking for in particular when it comes to new artists?
I'm just going to backtrack for a second about the illegal downloading. I mean, I think I agree with Trevor in the sense of I don't know that we're really all that terribly much affected by it. I mean, I have to think that whenever I was younger, you know, a lot of times we would, you know, tape trade, you know, and like, hey, can you make me a, I mean, I really only see downloading as a newer generation of that, in the sense of that, look, I didn't ever have someone make me a copy of a record that I wasn't curious about. And I'd like to think that someone isn't going to waste the time stealing a record for the sake of stealing. I mean, I would assume that they're taking it because they may like the band. There's a chance they're going to like the band. In the event that they do, maybe they will buy the record. or maybe they'll buy a ticket to a show, or maybe they'll buy a T-shirt. You know, I would like to think that all those things is kind of where it's at. I mean, do I think that we're being really grossly affected by downloads? Maybe the record companies are, but maybe that's the record company's fault for,
Absolutely.
flooding the market with a bunch of, shitty bands that put out shitty records. I mean, it's like the reason why record stores are going out of business, is because they're flooded with all this inventory that just ends up getting returned because it's for whatever reason,
Amen.
It starts $18 a CD too, man.
You led me to my next question, that whole thing. I mean, you just mentioned, Trevor, $18 a CD is fucking absurd. I mean, look at it, as an artist, as you know, both you guys are artists. You're lucky if you make $1 a CD, correct? I mean, maybe with a band like Ozzy, obviously you could make a little bit more, but as a new artist, if you make $1 per CD, you're lucky. And the CDs are selling for $17.99, $18.99 in some places, where they only cost pennies to produce. So obviously the labels got way too fucking greedy. The cost for labels to produce records and to promote records has gone down drastically since, the days we remember, Blasko from the 80s and early 90s. Yet the price of CDs have still been going up. Continue on what you were saying there, Rob, Blasko. I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
Oh, no, I mean, I know where you're going with it. I mean, look, the future of metal, who's to say? I mean, really, I think the time, that we're in is the future of music in general, in the sense of, how are we going to listen to music in the future? How, what will there be record stores in the future? Will everything, is iTunes the answer? Is giving music away for free like Radiohead and Nine Inch Nails? Is that going to be the new model? It's uncharted territory. I mean, is downloading a record fully off of Rock Band or Guitar Hero? I think it's like the wild, wild west right now, where nothing's really defined. There's no clear answers as to what the future of music is going to be. Sonically, the future of metal, who knows? I mean, it's like it could go more extreme, it could go less extreme. It's always going to be there, and just like Trevor said, it's always going to be underground, and that's why it is what it is. It's a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle that people get into. The more accessible it becomes, the more popular that it becomes, the less interest it's going to have with that underground audience, and that underground audience will continue to go further and further underground, looking for that next thing that they can relate to, that they can call their own, and that they represent their lifestyle, and that's kind of, that's my thought on that subject.
I remember CDs, even recently, I've bought CDs. I remember, I had mentioned this before, bands like System of a Down had their CDs $9.99 when they came out. And obviously they're a huge band. Obviously they made a lot of money. A lot of these bands have done that. I don't know why the industry hasn't put a cap on CDs where no CDs could be sold for more than $10. Like you said, Rob, it is the label's fault because they've constantly ripped off fans for all these years. And the other thing you said is there's so much shit that labels have put out over the years just in order to make a buck, overpriced CDs with maybe one or two good songs on it. Who could blame the fans for wanting to check out the shit before they buy it? I mean, I would if the opportunity's there. Now, I don't agree with there are a lot of fans out there that just exclusively download shit. That's inevitable. You're going to find people like that. But to go back to my question, Trevor, being a label owner, what do you see it as a label owner? Sorry for the long question there.
Yeah, that's fine, man. As a kid, I both purchased and I stole CDs or tapes back then because if stuff was too expensive, or if I had, X amount of dollars in my pocket, I would, I might take one and a couple times a big deal. But I think kids do that now, and there's even more. There's less of a risk for the kids because it's just online, and I don't think people are really going to go out there and take that effort to catch them. As far as being a label owner, I do keep my CDs all under $13.
Awesome.
Sometimes I have them at $10. It just depends on the amount of promotion and money I have to invest in that project as far as recording goes and the actual promotion behind it. I can't see myself ever seeing a day where I'd have to charge more than $13. I mean, knock on wood, I don't think, inflation is going to cause, stuff like that. But I think that with the amount of money you put in, if you actually do the stuff correctly, you actually properly prepare the record, mathematically, you expect to sell X amount of copies, you can, make the record for under $13 in the stores if you expect to sell a certain amount. You put a certain amount into advertising, into promotion, and into recording. And that's something that Unearth did for our first record with Metal Blade back in 2004. The Oncoming Storm, we had it signed in the contract that the regular edition of the CD would be $9.99 in stores, and that was very important to us, just so our fans would actually be able to go out there and pick up, you know, the 11 songs. Say this is the new Unearth record. There was a special edition that was, you know, a few bucks more, but the record with all the songs on it was only $10, and that's very important to us. I think that's actually what helped get us some more fans and some more sales out there, because I've seen bands do that in the past, and I think that's very important. So I think fans can see that when there's a CD that's $17.98. You know, they see there's only so many things that are, you know, you have to actually pay for to make this record. So you're just ripping me off at this point. And sometimes when it's not the band's fault, they might take it out on the band and actually just go, you know,
yeah, that's free. Unfortunate for the artists. And the bands have always become the scapegoat on that, which I think is, and the labels kind of make the artists the scapegoats. But like I said, there are those certain fans that obviously will take advantage of it.
Yeah, I think that there's always people that will go out there and just try to take stuff for free. Like Blasko was saying, I think that there are fans out there that might download it out of curiosity. Sure. And then later go out and buy it. That's what I did as a kid too. And now if I get something for free and I'll listen to a band, and then if I actually like it a lot, I'm going to go out and buy the record. I'll go to a show, or I'll buy the band's T-shirt or something. I think that's very important. And I think if people actually like something, it gives them a sense of belonging to that actual band and that whole experience. I think that's actually very important. I think that's what's been lacking a little bit with all the free downloading and the MySpace boom of bands. But I think that people do want a sense of belonging. And it's just like Blasko was saying again, that if a band does get too big, the underground will almost turn their back on the band, because they want something that's not paid attention to by a large, you know, group of people. That they want that band to feel like it's their own. So it's their sense of belonging. And back when I was a kid, when I was like 14 years old, this new band at the time called Earth Crisis came out, and my friend Mike, his buddy Eric, told him about this band, and then Mike showed me the band, and Eric got pissed at Mike because Mike showed me Earth Crisis. And he's like, but that was our band. It's like, because like the band wasn't popular at the time.
Right.
And you know, the band actually blew up in the hardcore scene. But that's what people in the real underground want, is a band to be their own, amongst only their friends and people that they know.
Well, I mean, I was like that too. I mean, I'm older than both you guys. I'm 43, but I remember, you know, when bands like AC/DC broke, I was all into them in high school. And, you know, Bon Scott, I saw them on the Highway to Hell tour, 78 or so, was my first concert. And then, you know, when Back in Black came out and everyone started getting into them, I was pissed. It's like, you know, fuck this. And you know, that's when I started getting into the new wave of British heavy metal and Motorhead and all those bands. But, you know, I was the same. When I was, you know, younger, I used to, you know, especially when a lot of the imports came out, a lot of the great new wave of British heavy metal bands, you know, the prices were a lot more, and it was tough for any kid to go out and pay that price. But, you know, you wanted to get your favorite music, so I would go out with a group of friends. We would drive 60 miles or wherever to our favorite record store at the time. You know, that's what we had to do back then. And the three of us would buy a bunch of records, then we would go home and, you know, record them off each other, you know. But, you know, eventually as years passed, I ended up buying most of them back on CD anyway. So, but, you know, as kids, you can't afford that kind of shit. And, you know, like you said, I thought that's great that you actually had that in your contract there, Trevor, because, you know, going back to like System of a Down, if I was a kid and I'm hell bent on buying, you know, whatever was new at the time when that first record came out, say a Limp Bizkit or whatever, and I was going to go buy their record, and I see it for $18.99, and I'm like, fuck, man, I got $20 in my pocket. I'm not going to spend it all on one CD. And then I see the System of a Down record for $9.99, and I'm thinking, wow, you know, I heard the song Sugar on the radio. You know, I'm going to spend the money on this band. Even though I set out to buy a different band, you know, of course, you're going to buy, and I think that obviously worked to their advantage, and I don't see why more bands do that, because they would sell a lot more records. But anyway, go ahead.
I bought that record, Toxicity. I bought that record because it was $9.99.
Right.
I'm not the biggest System fan in the world. I bought it because it was only $10. I'm like, that's $10. I'll check it out. I like that one song they had on the radio. I mean, they're more of that's a band that's on, you know, major rock radio on the harder rock stations. But it was $10. I'm like, all right, I'll buy this right now, and I did. And I thought the record was pretty good.
Yeah, it's
common sense. If it was $15, I wouldn't have bought it. Right.
Well, Blasko, going back, you know what Trevor said about in the agreement. Now, obviously, working at a management company, it's different. But do you? I know a lot of your bands are on independent labels like Century Media and Metal Blade. Do you have any control as far as setting a price on some of your artists' CDs, or do you talk to the label about negotiating, you know, a certain price?
I mean, yes. The easy answer to your question is yes. The more elongated answer to your question is, look, it's all about value, right? And I think people these days don't really see music really being as much of a value. Now, whether that's because if I walk into a record store and I can buy a video game, a CD, or a DVD, those are my choices, and that are all roughly right around the same, price. Then, I don't know. Does music have as much value as a movie does or as a video game does? I'd have to, if I put my mind, in the mind of a teenager, I'd say no. Especially whenever I know that the music is something that I can get for free. So really, at the end of the day, it's important to consider what is valuable. So you're going to need to do things with the CD to make it more valuable, whether it comes with the, video content, or whether it comes with extra songs, or whether it comes with exclusive packaging. I mean, I think, with the New in this moment, we searched out all those as ideas. The record is going to be either between $7.99 and $9.99 everywhere. On iTunes, you can get the record for $7.99, and if you buy the whole record, you get a song that isn't on the physical, copy of the record. So I think that it's up to the bands and up to the labels and managers, whoever, to sort of go okay, look, the common model of here's this physical product that we're going to put in the record store and see how well it does. I think you have to look at things outside of the box, and you have to really create more value for that as a product, because you figure that the music itself on that product is free. So why would someone buy it? Someone's going to buy it because they're a collector. I know plenty of people that collect vinyl now and don't even have record players, because they like the big artwork and whatever. So I think you just need to do your best to create a value for it, and keep the prices realistic, and get more. I mean, just like me or anybody else, you always want more for as little as possible.
So that's a great point, Blasko. And how active are you guys? Because it must be obviously frustrating. Say, you put some bonus material on a CD, whether it be like a video, a DVD, and boom, automatically it gets on YouTube. And, people could see it for free. So, maybe people won't buy the video or DVD because of that. So, I mean, it's not just the kids, the illegal downloading. It's, these big companies like YouTube that are allowing this kind of stuff. How can you actively go about, because obviously it backfired on Metallica when they, went about through the whole Napster thing. But, in a way they were right. It is their music, and people should not be taking their music for free. The way they went about it, I believe, was wrong. But how does a label owner or a management company owner actively go about this without sounding greedy or whatever, or what people might accuse you of being?
I think it's up to the fans. I mean, I think you have to trust your fans. I mean, I can't say for certain that I agree with you that what Metallica did backfired on them. I mean, if they didn't step up, who's to say how out of control this would be now?
Well, I'm talking about with a lot of fans. It maybe backfire is the wrong word, but I said a lot of fans took it negatively by the way they put most of the blame on the fans. But I'm sorry.
Right. And look, you can't please all the people all the time.
Right.
But I mean, how can you do it? How can you regulate? You can't. I mean, I think the reality is, look, I can't regulate. I mean, the only thing that I can regulate is what people don't have. So maybe I put more effort into a pre-sale, because that way I'm pre-selling the record, but yet no one has it yet, or at least I'm doing the best that I can to avoid that happening. But like I said earlier too, it's like, and then it's like if there's content out there that is sanctioned by the band or the label or management or whatever that's out there, and that fans can go and look at it, it's great. I mean, I think, with full reservations of not sounding like the old guy, is that whenever I was younger, I think the things that were so beneficial was the mystique, was the mystery. Like, you didn't want to know that Lars Ulrich was taking a shit right now. Like, you didn't want to know that. Like, you know what I mean? But now you have so much access to everything, which maybe also has something to do with the fact of why maybe record sales are down. Is like, hey, there's no mystery anymore. Nothing's making me want to go out and buy this record because I already know everything about it. I don't know. I don't have the answers. I'm just saying that, no more do we have the mystery that there was whenever I was younger. And it's just a new generation, and there's a lot of information out there. And, we really, for the most part, can't control it. And I was actually having a conversation recently with someone, a really, really super big artist was saying that, he didn't want any photographers at this particular event. But then it's funny because I bet you the entire first row were people that have, cell phones with cameras and video recorders on it, that the pictures and videos going to be uploaded on the internet quicker than a photographer. Anyway, so it's that you can't control it.
Well, it's funny you say that because you really can, and you see bands. I went and saw Linkin Park when they recently played, and I'm not a big Linkin Park fan, but I had free tickets from the publicist, and I went down and checked them out. And just as you say, half the kids in the audience are like taking pictures or videotaping the band, or they're sending text messages through the whole concert. And it's like, where's the enjoyment of seeing a live performance anymore? I mean, I remember seeing all the classic bands at the Long Beach Arena, whether it be AC/DC, Priest, Sabbath, all that stuff. And, that was a huge experience. Nowadays, it seems like a lot of these arena shows, it's just, Trevor, being in the underground metal, is there really an underground scene left with the media and the instant exposure, bands could get from, YouTube and MySpace? How do you see the underground scene going for the future?
I think there'll always be in underground, but I think what Blasko said about that, I think the romance of people's favorite bands is gone. In our scene right now, in this current metal scene that we're in with all the younger bands, I don't think there is another Metallica or Ozzy out there. I don't think there's another Anthrax or Testament at this point, because I think that people have taken away the whole romance of it. Like, that's my favorite band.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because there's so much exposure that the biggest band in our scene right now in the modern day bands is Killswitch Engage. And I believe, I could be mistaken, I think they have one gold record. There's plenty of bands from yesteryear, from the late 80s, early 90s, had, more than one gold record. And there's a lot of bands that are our biggest bands in our current scene that aren't drawing the numbers that those bands did back in the day. There might be more exposure and there might be better chart numbers, but there's not that favorite band, there's not that gold record band out there like there was before, because there is so much exposure. Getting to what you're saying.
Now, do you think it's more the exposure, or do you think it's a lot has to do with the free downloading that a lot of people blame it on?
I wouldn't say it's the free. Well, I wouldn't really say it's that, because that we're not drawing 5,000 to 6,000 people a night, like the bands did back then. We are still club sized bands. I mean, the biggest show that Unearth will play will maybe be a 2,000 cap place. That's in a big city. Most places between 500 and 1,000. And I know that goes across the board for, Lamb of God, Killswitch Engage, unless they team up together, and they'll just draw more and more. I'm not complaining by any means. I think it's a great place for this style of music to be. I think when you get into a venue too big, it's not as personal as it should be for underground music. But the whole thing about texting at shows, that happens now at underground shows. We played a few dates this past spring with Bury Your Dead and As Blood Runs Black. There was people texting at every show. You just see them. For every band, there's 5 bands in the bill. You see just kids out there texting and taking pictures, texting, and just not giving the full attention to what they're there for. So that they actually purchased the $15 ticket.
Some of these tickets are like $60 these days, man.
Not our shows, man.
Yeah.
But
that's cool.
They'll be texting during the whole show. It's like, well, you paid the money to get in here. Come on, enjoy yourself. To me, it doesn't make sense. I mean, I text. I have the modern day phones and multimedia things. I have a record label and I'm always busy. But if I'm at a show, or if I go to a movie, I'm not gonna text during those times. So it's kind of weird to me, but whatever.
Back in the day, the bands in the 80s and whatever did have a lot more media exposure, whether it be, from radio or MTV or whatnot. But today, you've got internet radio, you've got, satellite radio that are playing the underground bands, bringing them to the mainstream per se. And you've got the big tours. I mean, but, back in the day, you didn't have, tours like Ozfest, Gigantour, Sounds of the Underground that catered pretty much to the hardcore and thrash metal bands, where these kind of bands can play the big venues, sheds, and arenas.
I beg to differ, man. My first concert was Clash of the Titans when I was 12 years old.
Yeah, but that was a rare thing. That was like the first for those. But before Clash of the Titans, there wasn't. I mean, in Europe, you had them all the time, but they were mostly festival shows. It wasn't a traveling festival. But I think Clash of the Titans was really the only tour that catered to thrash metal throughout the 80s and early 90s.
The first Headbangers Ball tour, which had Pantera, Exodus, and Suicidal on it, but that was a club tour that came through Boston and played a club called the Channel,
right?
And that was I want to say 91.
And there were tours. I saw Venom, Slayer, and Exodus way back in the day. But they were more clubs. Yeah, you didn't have the arena tours. I mean, a lot of these big tours, you have to pay, you have to buy on. And, you got a lot of corporate, sponsorships and whatever involved. Is it worth it to get one of your artists?
To get bands on bigger shows? I mean, will
it sell a lot more records? 'Cause, a lot of people complain, to get their artists on, whether it be an Ozfest or,
It depends. I mean, I think, from a managerial perspective, it's like you kind of got to base it on what's realistic. I think it's a case-by-case basis, really. I mean, sometimes it could be and sometimes it couldn't be. I mean, you've got a situation like an Ozfest, right? Like, the second stage of Ozfest. Now, Trevor's played it, I've played it, bands that I manage have played it. You're always going to get different results. I mean, the bands are playing in front of all the same people that everybody else is playing. Some bands sell records, some bands go on to excel and do really well live and become like headliners, or will graduate up. I mean, that's where Slipknot started, that's where System of a Down started, but then again, there's plenty of bands that did that tour and broke up because they sold no records. So, I mean, who's to say? I mean, just because you're in front of people doesn't mean that that's going to equate to record sales or a career or something. It's like you kind of just got to analyze what the situation is, put your best foot forward, and hopefully it works out. And if it doesn't, you learn from your mistakes.
What is your main philosophy, Blasko, as far as a management company treating your artists and finding new artists? Do you have like a certain philosophy you go by?
I don't know that I live my life by some philosophy other than making shit happen. You know what I mean? I mean, every day is spent on progressing the band and making stuff happen and putting them in front of more and more people and coming up with marketing ideas and coming up with bigger and better tours and making sure that there's, visibility and, that's just part of the process.
Now, we've talked about, record sales, CD sales, and how, the sales have dwindled, but obviously there's a lot of other avenues for artists to make money, particular merchandising. I'm sure, you're both familiar with like these 360 deals going on where a lot of these labels are trying to get in the band's merchandise money and touring money, which is the other huge profit for bands that are, semi-successful anyway. What is your view on like these 360 deals?
For us, that wouldn't be a good option because that's how the band makes our money is we're gone 8 to 9 months a year. And so I think the deal would have to be pretty damn good for us to actually consider it. I also like the game of going into each city, hoping that kids buy the T-shirts and hoping that you might make back end on the show. The band isn't making a giant guarantee, and there's no guarantee in selling T-shirts. And so that's kind of the fun in it at the same time. It's like it's almost a challenge. It does fire the band up to even want to do our best even more. Just so if we do feel like we killed it and kids bought X amount of T-shirts, it made us feel pretty damn good. So these 360 deals, I think, if it was proposed to us sometime in the future, I mean, it'd take a lot more time and effort on my part to look deeper into it. For now, I want no part of it, but I can't say in the future it's something that I wouldn't even look at. But for now, I'm liking the way things are right now.
What about you, Blasko? What's your view on that?
I mean, my take on the 360 deal is if you're Madonna or Motley Crue or Korn or, these people that have been doing those kind of deals, it makes sense for them to do those kind of deals because there's a history there, and they're also being approached by huge conglomerates like Live Nation or whatever that you can do a projection of over the course of the last 3 years and then the future of the next 3 years of how much you'll make, and they give you a deal according to that. Now you can't take that model and then put it to a smaller label to smaller bands. It's not even fair. I mean, it's like a smaller label can't give me the same sort of offer that they would a Korn or whatever, and even in a smaller scale. I mean, Unearth can't do a projection of what you're going to make over the course of the next 3 years, and Metal Blade's going to write you a check for that. It's just not going to happen.
Well, some labels are signing new bands, maybe not the smaller labels, but some of the bigger labels are signing new bands to these deals, bands that have no history.
Any band that signs a 360 deal that has no history is fucking stupid.
There you go. Take that advice there, young artists.
Nicely put.
Now, as far as we've talked about the touring for the underground metal. How important has the internet become? Because something you mentioned about now metal. I mean, everything has become so much corporate, but it's coming into the metal where all these corporate companies are coming in, whether it be these corporate sponsors. I mean, you look at radio. Everything it's owned by Clear Channel. They have control of everything. All the arenas you are playing, they're Verizon, Hyundai Theater, Bank One Stadium, Sleep Train. Everything has become so corporate. The internet has brought, a lot of this back to the underground, whether it be the internet radio, podcasts like what we're doing. A lot of people say, how the internet is bad because of all the free downloading and the access we've talked about, YouTube and MySpace, the instant access. But obviously, if it wasn't for the internet, the underground would not have survived because the major labels are all completely corporate now. And really what thrived the independent labels as far as promoting their artists outside of touring was internet radio stations, internet podcasts, all these online fanzines and webzines and whatever, So how important is it for you, Blasko, with your new artists to promote your bands through the internet?
It's infinitely the single most important aspect that we have. It doesn't matter what I think about the internet because it exists. So if I think it's bad, it doesn't matter what I think because it exists. And if I had a problem with the internet, then me or anyone else that has a problem with the internet should move to Siberia or something. And
they got internet there too, though.
And save the homeless or something. I don't know. It's like it is what it is, and you know what it is, and you have to deal with it accordingly. It's either an advantage or it's not, but it doesn't change the fact that it exists, and there's nothing I can do about it other than just do the best that I can do to sort of, keep as much of a wrangle on the content that I can whenever I can, because I realize that the more a band goes out there and plays, the more there's going to be more and more content out there that I have no control over.
Right. Well, I guess that's my question. Being an old school guy, like myself, and being in bands throughout the mid 80s, throughout the 90s, pre-internet, and kind of, getting used to that whole philosophy. How have you adapted to the change, I should say, now being a management owner? And how do you prepare your bands for the future? I mean, we've been trained all these years, or particularly us, the older generation, I guess we could be called the older generation now, as kind of the old school method, whether it be through tape trading, through, promoting your artist by, sending stuff by mail, where nowadays, everything you could do everything online. I mean, a lot of labels aren't even sending out CDs now. They're just, boom, sending links through the internet. How do you prepare for the future, Blasko?
I think we're just in a position to ride the wave. I mean, we kind of, because we don't know what the future is. Clearly we have our seatbelts and crash helmets on for the future, but I mean, we also have to be prepared, that things are changing, and we also have to keep our minds open to maybe what is the way things are going to go. I mean, look, I've done the best that I could do to keep the In This Moment record from leaking, just because that's the way I wanted to approach it. There's probably a leak or two out there, but I've done all right.
How do you do that though? How do you prevent?
Well, I mean,
people?
I didn't. Anyone that wanted to listen to the record, we sent them a stream. We didn't make record promos. We didn't send out promos. I didn't care about a magazine review. And if it was somebody important that wanted to do a feature or something on the band, we'd send them the stream. And we had a party that we played the record. If you really wanted to hear it, you could hear it at that party. The band played some songs. If you want to see it in a live application, there was things that we did to do the best that we could do to ensure the fact that it's everywhere until the record comes out. And I don't know if that's going to help us or not, but that was, it's an experiment. Like every record that you release or put out or whatever, it's all a brand new experiment of how we're going to try and get this heard or prevent it from just, taking a giant bath in returns or whatever. I'm sure Trevor's the same way. Every release he puts out like he said, he's got one coming out next month, and then a couple months later he's got another one coming out. Now, in that time period of a couple months, the industry is going to change that drastically in those couple months.
Right.
So everything that he does, he has to be thinking that far into the future ahead of like, okay, well, certainly whatever record he puts out October 2008 is going to be a completely different process than October 2009. So we just got to ride the wave, and try and, predict as to what, the newer processes are going to be.
Do you have, Trevor, do you have any special ways in preparing for that, being a label owner, and what methods have you used to take advantage of the internet?
We have copies that we send out via the internet that you cannot transfer files, like a watermark copy. And so if it does leak, we can trace it back to the person who might have leaked it. Besides that, you just have to kind of put your trust in people as well. And with our record, with the Unearth record, our label actually had people they made them sign something if they wanted the entire record. So it's gotten to that point where you have to sign some kind of legal document stating that you won't leak the record. And it's kind of weird right now, and I think that everyone's in kind of a weird place and just kind of waiting to see what happens in the future of actually buying records. But for now, man, just do what you can do and hope for the best and roll with the punches. And that's what I think all of us are doing. And I think that's a big reason why vinyl is actually coming back right now. I believe it's next week or in 2 weeks that a bunch of Metallica records come out on vinyl. Right. There's a bunch of other released on vinyl because there are people out there, other collectors, that do want the record and they want to have something, of value to actually look at of that album instead of just, an MP3 or something.
Right. And in the interview I did with David Ellefson, he had mentioned that the top 3 music sales is iTunes, Walmart, and I believe Best Buy, in that order. And it's pretty astonishing that people are downloading music more than they are actually buying actual CDs. Do you see that true as far as your label is concerned, Trevor?
I'm not sure that's an exact science yet. As far as Unearth goes, I know that back in 2004 when our record, Oncoming Storm, came out, there was about 5% download for iTunes. That was about the ratio.
Back then, yeah.
5% of our sales. Within the past 2 years, it's up to about 40%. Wow. I'm not saying it's not exceeding our actual record sales yet, iTunes, but it's getting a lot closer and it's rapidly approaching that. So I don't think that really holds true for us. But we have been a band for 10 years. We might have some, more fans that do purchase more record, CDs than downloading MP3s off of iTunes. But, perhaps for the younger bands that, came out last year, that might hold true. But for us, it's still CDs are still winning by a small margin. I
know, Blasko, you had mentioned, a lot of the younger bands you have, and you had mentioned in this moment, you have a special deal through iTunes where they could buy it, for $7.99, the full record. Have you seen that same result, that actually iTunes, as far as your bands go, has exceeded sales than actual CDs?
All of our bands' primary sales is traditional. Digital has not surpassed traditional yet for any of our bands. I think if you're talking about metal bands or hard rock bands, those fans are more collectors and they actually want the product. If you're talking about a Britney Spears track or a Fergie track, is there going to be more downloads and physical purchases of that? Yeah, probably. Sure. But not currently not in metal. The fan base is way too much of a collection based sort of thought process, right? Like that kind of individual. So I think it'll be a while. But for myself, I'm a metal guy too. But whenever Tower Records closed, the next best physical product store next to me was a Best Buy, and I'll tell you what, I'm not going to walk into Best Buy and buy a CD ever. Right. It just feels weird. I
agree. I totally agree.
And so since Tower Records closed, I now am exclusively an iTunes buyer. I buy all of my stuff off of iTunes. I think the process is great. Some people will argue that the quality isn't as good, but you know what? Put it on my iPod and really it sounds fine to me. But I just think the process is good. They refer you to other things. You can listen to a little bit of a sample. Right. You can read reviews. To me, it's as close to that being in an independent record store as I have, but yet it's in the comfort of my own home. You know what I mean? So I had not bought a record since Tower Records closed. A physical product, only digital sales for me.
Well, I agree. I think what led, Tower Records closing, it wasn't the fact about the downloading of music, which a lot of people say. It was the fact that places like Walmart and Best Buy could undersell their CDs because they have other product that they make their money on, so they could sell a CD cheaper, $13.99 or $12.99 or whatever. Whereas the thing that really bugged me about Tower, even though I was a big fan of Tower, even though I haven't bought a record there in years, but when I did go out and buy a record, they were $17, $18.99. $2.99 at Tower. And that was the one thing that bugged me. But magazines, you know, I mean, there aren't any places around that have, like, you know, say European magazines like Classic Rock and other products that Tower had, imports and that kind of stuff you could always find. And now I think stuff is going to lean more to the internet because, you know, obviously Best Buy and Walmart, they're going to only cater to the popular bands and they have limited shelf space. It's going to be a lot tougher for underground bands that would be on, you know, say Iron Clad Recordings or some of the bands you handle, Rob. Do you ever see it coming to the point where it's record labels will be non-existent and it's going to be exclusively through the internet or perhaps just supermarkets like, you know, Walmart and Best Buy and that kind of thing?
I think that it's going to be a long way off before there's no record labels. I mean, record stores, sure, that record stores won't be around for very much longer. You know, record companies are just going to have to diversify. I mean, the business of hustling pieces of plastic with music on it is currently a bad business model. So they're just going to have to figure something else out. To me, the thought process of going in like a CD trader or something and dropping down $7.99 for a used CD is so foreign to me right now. And that's used record stores, you know. And as soon as there's like a really great way to get high quality movies off of the internet and download them fast or whatever, then you can consider, yeah, that'll be the last straw. As soon as people start bootlegging, you know, video games and DVDs on a much more accessible level like CDs, yeah, you can pretty much consider that the end of the record store as you know it.
I agree there. What are your thoughts, Trevor?
Well, I'm hoping that it sticks around for a bit. I mean, Blasko said, I think people just have to kind of ride the wave and just kind of figure out something to reinvent themselves here. Because sales of actual CDs will eventually go down the toilet. So there's things that they have to do. I mean, these 360 deals, it's not really for us, but there's things that they have to think of that really no one's thought of yet to stay afloat. And, you know, people will always want music, so they have to find a way to help promote that and find a way to make money to help promote that. Because the internet isn't the only way to do it. I mean, you have to have the money to actually provide the print advertising, to get out there and promote the actual shows. So the labels can't go away entirely. They have to be there in some sense. It might not be what they are now or what they were 10 years ago by any means, but it's going to be there in some sort. And I think everyone's kind of in this weird place right now where they're trying to brainstorm and figure out how to do it. Obviously, they'll get there, but it's going to take some brainstorming, a lot of people, figuring out what to do.
What can we expect in 2009, Blasko, as far as a new Ozzy record or any other new albums? You mentioned In This Moment's coming out with a new record. Why don't you update the fans on what you got going on?
A new Ozzy record in the distant future. The new In This Moment record comes out September 30th. Anyone that wants to come by and say hi, I'm at myspace.com, Blasko, Blasko 666. And for any management inquiries or whatever, you can find us at mercenarymanagement.com or myspace.com/mercenarymanagement.
I got to ask you, because I know a lot of people are curious about this upcoming Ozzy record. Is there anything you could tell us about it, and how involved were you in the writing process?
I can't tell you anything.
Nothing? Come on, just a little bit.
Can't tell you anything.
All right. Well, what about you, Trevor? What do you got going on? You Unearth has a new record coming out in the next couple weeks, and you also have that live DVD you guys are still promoting. What about some of the new Iron Clad recordings you got going on for 2009?
Yeah, man, that's what I got. October 14th, the new Unearth record, the March coming out. We have that DVD came out about 6 months ago called Alive from the Apocalypse. We have a full U.S. tour coming out October 1 through 3rd. Hitting most major cities in the U.S. As far as Iron Clad goes, just put out the record from the Classic Struggle, new record from a band called Kill What I Adore on November 25th. So I'm just keeping busy, man. You can check it out on unearth.tv or ironcladrecordings.com, and both of those projects have MySpace accounts with those names. So just check it out. Come say hello. I check all the emails and everything. So that's what I got going on, man.
All right. You said unearth.tv?
TV.
So you can see videos through there. Is that correct?
There's videos on there. Yeah, we got most of our most recent videos up there. Our new one's coming soon, I think in the next week or two from the new record, and we'll try to keep that stuff up to date as most we can.
Right on. Well, I appreciate it, guys. All you guys out there, definitely hit them up. Any new bands out there want to submit material, they both gave out their MySpace pages, so you could turn them on to your music via MySpace. I want to thank both you guys for joining us us on this very special episode. So,
Thanks for having us, man.
Thanks for having us.
You got it, guys. Take care. Well, there you go. Another classic episode of the Shockwave Skull Sessions. Many, many thanks to both Blasko and Trevor Phipps for being a part of that great discussion. Some great advice given from both those guys. Hope you guys out there enjoyed that. Once again, be sure to contact both Trevor and Blasko and tell them that you heard the discussion right here on the Shockwave Skull Sessions. Like I said, man, we've got a lot of great stuff coming up, so keep those emails coming at me. Again, my email address is shockwaveskullsessions@gmail.com. If you got this as a link, you could check out the official Shockwave Skull Sessions site at roadrunnerrecords.com/skull sessions. Be sure to check out all the back episodes as well. We got a lot of great discussions on those back episodes. And be sure also to check out my sister podcast, the Shockwaves Hard Radio podcast. That is available on hardradio.com. We got a lot of great interviews coming up on that site as well. The current site is still the Independent Metal Music Podcast. Some great bands on that episode, so be sure to check them out. You can check out both my podcasts through iTunes. Just go to the iTunes store and type in Shockwaves. Both podcasts will pop up, so be sure to send and write those comments in on the iTunes page as well. With that said, man, I want to thank you all for all the support you've given me over the past year or two I've been doing these podcasts. And once again, spread the word. Lastly, I want to let you guys know you can also check out the Shockwave Skull Sessions on the Classic Metal Show, one of my favorite internet radio shows out there. It's also available as a podcast form too, but we are featured live every Mondays, I believe. You can check out their site for the exact day and times. You could go to the classicmetalshow.com or cmsradio.net, and be sure to support those guys too. Once again, like I said, one of my favorite internet radio shows and podcasts out there. In fact, we're going to have Neely on our upcoming 80s metal podcast, so be sure to check that out. That'll be coming up real soon here on the Shockwave Skull Sessions. With that said, man, I am Bob Nalbandian signing off. Thanks again for your support.